Surprise! You have no idea how appreciative I am for you making it possible for me to be here on this special day. Little did you know you've allowed me to tick off an item from my bucket list. For years and years, I have told Phil, if you will let anybody write your biography, I'm the one. I think it'd be a bestseller, don't you? But he's never given me that consent. So this is the next best thing. I mean, it's like giving his funeral homily and he's still sitting here. You can stop squirming. This is a tribute, not a roast. However, one of your church members yesterday said, I do hope you share a couple of revealing things. We'll see about that. I do have a word from the home front. Our dear mother, our beloved sister, send their love to you, as do the entire immediate family. They wanted to be here, and they wish you well on this special day. I'm going to have moments like this. Recently, I told my mom my opportunity to speak at this commemoration will truly be one of the greatest honors of my life. I don't claim to be an expert in anything, but I'm bragging when I tell you I am one of the world's foremost authorities on Phil Hardwick. And I love what I know. When it comes to celebrating my brother, I'm all in. I am the celebrator in chief. So thank you so much for planning this awesome surprise for my brother and letting me come and celebrate with you. Would you read the scriptures with me? Mark chapter 3, beginning at verse 13. Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. These are the 12 he appointed: Simon, to whom he gave the name Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, and his brother John. To them he gave the name Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Jesus loved brothers. You don't believe me? Just look at the 12 he called. There wasn't one, there were 2 sets of brothers among the 12 he chose. Andrew and Peter, James and John. And I always found it interesting that Jesus referred or nicknamed James and John Boanerges, which means sons of thunder. Many believe this is a reference to their disposition. That is, they had a very bold and aggressive personality. You recall that time when Jesus and his disciples were intending to go into a Samaritan village, and they denied him. And James and John showed their hot nature when they said, Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy them? There's no question they were quick to get hot under the collar. But the sons of thunder may have simply meant they were loud, thunderous preachers. Well, we've heard a tradition of loud, thunderous preachers in our day, haven't we? The truth is, biblical linguists don't know the meaning behind the Hebrew or the Aramaic here. We just don't know. But let's move on. Let's fast forward. Let's run the clock ahead to the 1970s. There was another set of brothers who felt a sense of call. They, like the 12, wanted to follow Jesus. Their names, Phil and Steve. I've often wondered if Jesus had nicknamed us, what would it be? I've given it a lot of thought. I truly think it would be something like this: the Sons of Curiosity. The Hardwick boys have always been curious souls. Now, I want to be quick to say that I think curiosity has gotten a bad rap over the years. And primarily because of the proverb, curiosity killed the cat. We've used that statement to warn against being too inquisitive in matters that do not concern us. And it's true. We often stick our nose in places where it doesn't belong. But curiosity isn't a negative term. It's a necessary term. Just look it up. The main definition in the online version of Merriam-Webster says, a desire to learn. It's our eagerness to explore, to discover, to figure it out. We were born with curiosity. You want to see curiosity in action? Just look at one of the children in here. You'll see it all day. And from that age to where we are now, we've always asked the questions, why? 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 Curiosity discovered medicine. Curiosity put a man on the moon. Curiosity put a computer that we can put in our pocket we call the cell phone. Curiosity continues to take us beyond the boundaries. Curiosity has currently catapulted us into the world of artificial intelligence. Hopefully, we can harness its helpfulness while diminishing its hurtfulness. But curiosity is not a bad thing. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. Right after I moved to Nashville, I received a postcard from Phil. On the picture side was a completely white background. And in the middle was this big, bold, black question mark. When I turned the card over and read Phil's beautiful script handwriting, he said, I live with this daily. If I had been able to write Phil's book, a picture of that postcard would have been on the cover because that's the theme of his life. He lives with questions. He wants to know. He wants to grow. He wants to learn. Now let me tell you the difference between the sons of curiosity. No two brothers are the same, right? My curiosity can be satisfied out of a reliable book or a lecture or a report. Phil, that truth may originate from a reliable source, but that's not enough. He's got to jump in with both feet to discover it for himself. And I've always been jealous of that practical approach Phil has because, listen, whenever he not only learns the truth, he earns the truth. It becomes him. Obviously, Phil's curiosity started at an early age. I remember as a child, we had a cat that died. We gave it a proper burial out back, but my brother's mind kept thinking, kind of like, I wonder what a dead cat looks like that has been in the ground for several days. You guessed it, he dug up the cat. It was not a sight to behold. And the smell, we owe the skunk an apology. On that occasion, curiosity did not kill the cat, but it sure dug it up. Phil left that cat to our dear grandmother Mayo to reinter. She was not happy. Phil, it may have been one of the few times we heard our precious grandmother use a little curse word. And then when microwaves first came out, one of the first warnings was, do not take an egg out of the carton and put it in the microwave. That was too much for Phil. There wasn't a spot inside that microwave that wasn't splattered with exploded egg. At least that's the last time he ever did that, as far as I know. But let me hasten to share how curiosity has truly developed my brother into the person he is today. By the way, he's in good company. I found this great quote. A great man said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." Do you know who said that? Albert Einstein. You like that analogy, don't you? Does it make up for the cat and the egg story? My brother has always been curious about people, and that makes him beloved. Phil never meets a stranger. He knows every person he meets has a story, and he's genuinely interested in that story. To Phil, a person is more than just a face. That person is an individual with wants and needs and strengths and weaknesses and fears and dreams and everything else all woven together to make up a unique, irreplaceable person. And it doesn't matter how different you are, whether those differences are racial, cultural, educational, or generational, or whatever. Phil meets people at a level that gives them value, worth, and importance. And people notice that. A while back, an Irish couple moved into the apartments Phil lives in. He didn't have to do this, but he went to the fresh market and bought a fresh loaf of blueberry bread. He wrote a little note welcoming these people to the community and put this on their door. That international couple could not believe the graciousness of Phil and this random act of kindness. They still talk about it today, and they have become friends for life. That's my brother. My brother has always been curious about issues, and that has made him well informed. Whether it's civil rights or women's rights or gender rights or any other human rights, Phil's curiosity has helped him work through thorny issues, and he's always fallen on the side of inclusion, advocating for justice and equality for all. Being from Mississippi, Phil grew up in the 60s, when civil rights was at the forefront. He personally witnessed Jim Crow and the days of segregation as well as integration. Phil could never understand why a black person had to drink from a separate water fountain or use a separate restroom. Phil grew up befriending African Americans in a day it was not popular to do so. As a matter of fact, as a tadpole preacher, Phil was invited to preach at an all-black church. I love to hear Phil tell the story. There were a lot of pastors on hand that day, and they all sat up on the altar behind him. And whenever Phil said something they really approved of, not only would he get a hearty amen, they would reach up and pop him on the back. Phil said, "I could hardly sit down after that day." I guess he received a holy wearing out. That's my brother. My brother's always been curious about religions, and that has made him well-rounded. Phil is secure enough in his faith that fellowshipping with people who believe differently than him is not a threat. On the contrary, It's an opportunity for him to grow and understand and show mutual respect. One of my all-time Phil stories is when he went to the Big Sur and entered a monastery for about 2 weeks. There, Phil participated in prayer and worship, sometimes in the wee hours of the morning. He was also assigned a chore, which was washing the dishes. I guess that's what they give all the newbies there. But while he was there, Phil heard about a hermit monk, a recluse that lived up in a little cell in the woods all by himself. And he would only come out at the time of a festival of his own choosing. You know where I'm going with this, right? Phil's curiosity led him right to the door of that recluse. And after knocking on the door with no answer, he was about to leave when the door cracks open. Phil explained who he was and why he was there. The monk motioned him to come inside and sat him at his meager table. Phil said, "I was talking incessantly with the monk. He didn't say a word." Finally, when they sat across from one another, the hooded monk finally raised up, and Phil looked into the face of a very elderly man, crow's feet beside his eyes, beady eyes that looked into his soul. And all of a sudden, the monk said, "Let us break bread together." And there in a hermit's cell up in a woods, a mystery monk broke bread and shared the cup with Phil. And they communed with one another, and more importantly, with God. That's my brother. My brother has always been curious about Scripture, and that's made him a source of inspiration. In my college and seminary days, I sat under some really great professors. In my own ministerial journey, there were a lot of pastors and teachers who were very influential in teaching me things. But never have I learned more about the Scriptures than I have from my own dear brother. Phil takes the Bible seriously. I don't have to tell you this, but when he stands in this pulpit every week, it's only after he has carefully, studiously, meticulously, reverently, insightfully, prayerfully, and faithfully examined the text of the Scripture to glean its truth for us today. Many years ago, when Phil was serving a church in Mississippi and I was in a church just over the county line in Tennessee, we used to meet every week at the Pickwick State Park in Counce, Tennessee, for breakfast. You should have been there. By the way, after breakfast, we always found ourselves out on the balcony in some rocking chairs. Phil and I have always been rockers. You put us in a rocking chair and we can rock with the best of you. But you should have been a fly on the balcony banister listening to the Sons of Curiosity. We had some deep fireside chats. I guess you could say lakeside chats. But we really had some very deep theological discussions. And early on, I noticed Phil had a unique ability to get at truth. He would see things I had never thought of, and he would communicate them in a way that was relevant and understandable. I became a student of my brother Phil way back then. Phil, almost 3 years my junior, has always been my mentor. If I let Phil speak right now, he would take me on. He would challenge what I'm saying. He would not agree. But that's just who he is. That's my brother. My brother has always been curious about Christian scholarship. and that's made him well versed. One of the most fascinating traits about my brother is that he is not intimidated by well-learned people. He wants to talk to them. He wants to befriend them. He wants to pick their brains. When he was a young pastor at Kossuth First Baptist Church, he invited the late Dr. Frank Stagg, professor, Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and one of the eminent historians, theologians in Southern Baptist history. I'll never forget when I was sharing this with pastoral friends, they would ask me, how did he do that? Frank Stagg? And I would always say, he invited him. My brother is fearless. On another occasion, he called up a noted Southern Seminary theologian, Dr. Del Moody, and even a theological heavyweight, Dr. Walter Brueggemann at Columbia University. Even on another occasion, he picked up the phone because he had a question about baptism. He was discussing baptism with some friends, Church of Christ friends, by the way. He made a transatlantic call to Dr. George Beasley Murray, who had just written a book on the subject. Phil told me some time ago, if you want to know something, go to the scholars. That's my brother. Finally, my brother has always been curious about Jesus. And that has been the catalyst for 50 years of Christian ministry. Earlier, we read about the 12 disciples chosen by Jesus. They came from every walk in life. Some were fishermen. One was a despised tax collector. Another was a zealous member of a political party. We hardly know anything about 6 of them. But tradition says these men were likely in their late teens or 20s when they were called. Many believe Peter may have been closer to the age of Jesus, 30, because Peter was married. But almost everybody universally believes Jonathan was the youngest. Or John. John and Phil may have been around the same age when they were called to the ministry. Phil was 17 years old. John was always true to the end and lived well into the first century. He was probably the last living disciple. Now we are living in the 21st century, and we're celebrating another person who chose to follow Jesus and has done so for 50 years. Who follows anyone or anything for 50 years? That's my brother. If you look at the bulletin this morning and look at the 1974 ordination service, you'll notice there was a charge given. Matter of fact, we heard it a minute ago from Jimmy Price, a very esteemed lawyer in Corinth, Mississippi, and a personal friend of the family. I'd like to give a charge to the Church of the Vine this morning. Now, let me share this with you. The person I've been talking about has been at this church for a long time. I couldn't believe it when I saw that 2006 to present. That's almost 18 years, right? I want you to know my brother loves every one of you. He's been curious about you. And he considers it an honor to stand in this pulpit day after day and week after week. And I know you enjoy him. You know, every week he really gives you a pastoral charge. But today I'm called to do it. And I would simply charge you, after your pastor, to do 3 things. 1, always keep an open mind. Number 2, keep asking questions. Number 3, Keep exploring, discovering, and growing. It's so easy to get set in our ways and sit down in our comfort zone. But if you really want to experience life in its fullest, stretch yourself. Attain new truth as it comes to you and continue to grow. And Phil, 50 years ago, Jimmy Price gave that charge. Today, I get to give it to you. This is your charge for your next 50 years in ministry. And I know before I even say it, you're going to comply because it's who you are. It's like breathing. It's like a heartbeat. Phil, today I charge that you never, ever cease being cautious and curious. Curiosity may have killed the cat, but it made you. Phil, you are my brother in the flesh. You are my brother in the faith. You are my best friend. And I love you so much. Oh, and one more thing. James and John were sons of Zebedee. Phil and Steve were sons of Harvey and Joyce. Our father must have watched this from a front row seat somewhere else today. But our dear mother, she wanted to be here so badly. So much so, she left you a surprise too.
I feel if I could be anywhere in the world right now, I would want to be right there with you to help celebrate your 50 years of Christian ministry. It's been a joy of my life to watch God call you, lead and guide you, and your response to Him. Thank you so much for being my son. And I'm grateful that I am your mother. Please, I love you with all my heart. And I want you to know that I'm so proud of you and the job you've done and all your life and the man you've become. Congratulations, son.